Hello, this is Mark McElroy. I'm here at the Electric Cave Recording Studio in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'm here to talk about these. I've made some of these videos and people have asked me, what are those speakers behind you? Most notably the Yamahas that are close up. So I was going to take a few minutes and talk about the speakers that I use in here and why, and talk about the Yamaha NS1s. They're not NS10s, they're actually NS1s. We can talk about the NS10s, of course we have to. We can talk about studio monitors. And then I'll show a few other sets of speakers. So, for those who don't know, the Yamaha NS10s became an industry standard in studios for small bookshelf style, near field monitor speakers. Two-way. Now, it's difficult to talk about speakers. People take their speakers very personally. As well they should, because you need a personal relationship with the speakers you're mixing on in order to really mix well. So let's zoom back for a second. Let's just talk about speakers. I would say you should, first of all, listen to music that you like on the speakers that you're going to mix on. You really have to develop that relationship with your speakers. Know what the music you like sounds like and the music you want to sound like, and then what you're doing, what you're working on, so that they can be parallel somehow, or you can learn. Basically, you learn from putting songs on your monitors that you admire. You go like, wow, that's something. I hear that now in context. I hear how that relates to what I'm doing, and now I can make some changes. So a lot of people listen to music on little earbuddy things, headphones, little Bose type Bluetooth players in their car is where a lot of people do their recreational music listening. And a lot of people don't do it sitting at a mixing console or in their studio workspace, but I highly recommend doing that, getting in the habit of just actually listening to music rather than recording music. Get that perspective. So, back to the Yamaha NS10s. So they're a bookshelf speaker, compact, two-way, one woofer, one tweeter. And they became an industry standard, and begrudgingly. This is how we get back to why people take their speakers really personally. Some people say, you must have Yamahas, no way you can work without them. Some people say they are crap, only Genelec are good. You can go on and on. I don't participate in any of that. What works for you is good for you, as long as they're a full range speaker. Which, kind of, the NS10 isn't really that full range, but we all know their weakness, and that is in the low end. And you just kind of learn how to work with it. They're great to reference to, if the kind of thing where if they sound good on the Yamahas, and one other set of speakers, they'll sound good on everything. So why do I have NS1s and not NS10s? Well, the NS1 was actually kind of a little more of a deluxe version of the NS10. As we see, they're in a really nicer wood veneered cabinet. They're fancier looking. They're essentially the same speaker, but the difference between the NS1s and the NS10s are they're not fatiguing like the NS10s are. They actually sound a little better. They provide the same purpose. They serve the same purpose in the studio. But a lot of people, when you listen to NS10s, it just kind of makes you tired or depressed or something, because they're so one-dimensional, so flat, so they don't glisten at all, which is what people admire about them and what makes them good to mix on, but also is a bit of a downer. So I switched to the NS1s, and I've been happy ever since. So I have something that's like the NS10s. If someone says, do you have NS10s? Oh yeah, these are Yamahas, same thing. It's enough to get past that conversation. I actually like them. So let's look at some other speakers here. Let's see if you'll see, believe it or not, yeah, you see them here. These Mackie PA speakers. I use them all the time. I wish I didn't use them as much as I did. the reason I began using them is people like to track things in the control room, especially guitars, when you're doing guitar overdubs and things. And when you're doing that, you really got to feel it coming back at you, like you're playing live. And after blowing or having studio partners and friends blow a bunch of speakers on me, I was like, why don't I just get a really powerful... Well, actually, it wasn't my decision. My friend Jim came up with this idea, and it worked great. Just these ridiculously powerful PA speakers for tracking loud music and not worrying about blowing things. Or they're very full range. They're a little hissy. The internal amp gives in, and they have that piezo type tweeter, so they have a but they're remarkably full range, and so I started using them for loud stuff, and then I monitor on them all the time now, because it's just fun to like crank it up. So anytime when I'm not doing that really critical style listening that you do on the Yamahas, or I'll bounce back between those Mackeys and those Yamahas quite a bit. I did modify them in case you're thinking of doing this yourself. If you're looking for a set of powered speakers, I think it was the Made in Italy Mackeys. There's a Made in Italy. I think they might have made a Made in the USA version of this. These are the Made in Italy ones. Then they eventually went to Made in China. The Made in Italy ones were probably made by some higher end, contracted out to a higher end speaker manufacturer in Europe. They tend to be the ones that are the best sounding. And then, you may not be able to notice it, but I ended up plugging the bass ports. You see where I'm moving my finger here. They were working out great for me, but when I was working between the Yamahas not having any low end and the Mackeys having a little too much low end, I wasn't getting my kick and bass quite right for a little while. But I found by plugging those bass ports, it just fixed them. Ported speakers are kind of a bad idea in the studio because they create bass that's not on the recording. They actually create low end themselves. So I generally don't go for speakers that are ported. These happen to be ported, but I've jammed up the ports and it fixed them. So I'm pretty happy about that. And those Yamahas as well, no ports. Two-way is also a really important thing, I think, in studio mixing speakers. We'll move on. Here, the other set of speakers you hear, the black ones, those are some modified. The cabinets are Genesis. And I use these to kind of build my kind of ultimate set of monitors by changing the crossovers, changing out the tweeters, trying different woofers, bringing those woofers back, trying different things, and made a set of speakers that. So this is the third example. These are kind of like PA speakers, and these are like really good home speakers, like audiophile kind of home speakers. They've been messed with a little. Genesis already are really good speakers. Messed with them a little, just to really get a very full range, pleasant to listen to for mixing on. So, and then you'll see these little minimus, realistic minimus. You might know about the Auratones or the Awful Tones. Just having a speaker that really is limited, seriously limited, to reference to make sure that what you're doing will sound good on seriously limited playback. It used to be someone would have like an AM radio speaker, one Auratone in the middle was, if you were mixing, if your music was going to be on television, everyone had a mono TV back in the 70s and the early 80s, and so the idea was, you see these old pictures of studios with one little speaker in the middle. So it's just handy to have a pair of bad speakers around. And for bad speakers, these aren't that bad. So it's a good compromise. So here are 4 sets of speakers that I use often. I have a few other sets of speakers I sometimes swap out. I have a set of speakers in the main room, which are the Events, the Event 5050. Those are the kind of, they've been everywhere in studio and other, but they live out there now. I run the Mackies, like I said, are powered. The other speakers are passive, but I run them off of a high-powered 500 watt kind of hi-fi stereo amp, solid state. You need lots of headroom. Here's the key: why I use passive speakers, and why when you use passive speakers, use an amp that is super powerful, because then you're just working in those lower watt. You might be, if you're listening at mixing volume, you might be using 12 watts, 15 watts, 30 of the 500 watts available to you. But having all that headroom just gives you this definition that you can really hear. And if you're using an amplifier that's pushed to its limits, then you don't get that definition. You get compression effect already. You get things being sawed off. So they use a powerful amplifier and just use a little bit of that signal. The most powerful amplifier that sounds good that you can get your hands on. That's why some, not all, I got no internet fight over this once when I mentioned this on a forum somewhere back when I bothered to comment in forums. Some speakers that have their own, like these Mackies, that have their own power amp built into them, they're really engineered really close. So it's a 200 watt speaker with a 200 watt amp. That's the opposite effect. Sometimes, like if you're using those kind of speakers and you're cranking them, you're going to have some kind of detriment between the matching. Now, if you say that to someone who has a really nice set of powered speakers in their studio, they may just go bananas. So, if you're that person, sorry, but it's just an opinion. We're allowed to have them. So I like using the passive monitors, and I do use active monitors as well sometimes, and I don't poo-poo them too much. I was just telling you why I like the passive ones. Alright, that's enough speaker talk for now, I think. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I have other videos like this I posted, so just go around looking for them, and hopefully you find it informative.